Happy Sunday, everybody, and welcome to The Science Behind with me, Harper Kravitz. This episode is the science behind your cup of coffee. In this episode, I'm going to take you through the very cup of coffee you drink every morning from farm to table. Let's get into it. Let's get started with the plant itself. Coffee doesn't grow just anywhere. It needs very specific conditions. Think of it like a person who only feels comfortable in a certain kind of weather. Not too hot, not too cold, not too dry, not too wet. Coffee grows best in places near the middle of the earth, in countries like Brazil, Ethiopia, Colombia, and Vietnam. These places have warm weather, regular rain, and higher land, where temperatures are a bit cooler. Now, here's something a lot of people don't realize. Coffee plants actually prefer shade. That means they naturally grow under taller trees, not out in open fields. In the wild, coffee would grow as part of a forest, big trees above, coffee plants below, and a lot of other plants and animals living together. This kind of setup is important because it creates balance. The trees block sunlight, their leaves fall and feed the soil, their roots hold the ground together, animals live there and help spread the seeds. It's a system where everything supports everything else. When farmers grow coffee this way, it's called shade-grown coffee, and it's one of the best ways to grow coffee if you want to protect nature. Birds can live in these farms. Insects help pollinate plants. The soil stays rich and healthy. Water stays in the ground instead of washing away. But not all coffee is grown this way anymore. Over time, as more people around the world started drinking coffee, the demand grew. Farmers were under pressure to grow more and faster, so many switched to sun-grown coffee. This means cutting down trees and planting coffee in open sunlight. At first, it seems like a good idea. More sunlight can mean faster growth and more beans. But here's the problem. When you remove the trees, animals lose their homes, the soil dries out and becomes weaker, rain can wash the soil away, and farmers often need chemicals to help plants grow. It's kind of like removing the roof from a house and expecting everything inside to stay the same. It doesn't work that way. And there's another big piece to this. Trees store carbon. When they're cut down, that carbon goes into the air, which adds to climate change. So right at the start, before coffee is even picked, there are already big environmental choices being made. Coffee plants take time. After planting, it can take around 3 to 4 years before a plant produces its first cherries, and even then, it needs careful attention. Farmers have to watch for too much rain, not enough rain, pests, and diseases. Now let's talk about climate change, because this is becoming a huge issue for coffee farmers. Coffee plants are sensitive. Small changes in temperature can affect how well they grow. If it gets too hot, the plants don't grow as well. The beans may not taste as good, and pests can spread more easily. In some places, farmers are being forced to move their crops higher up in mountains where it's cooler, but there's only so much space up there. So climate change isn't just an abstract idea here. It directly affects how much coffee can be grown and where it can be grown. And that affects farmers' incomes, global supply, and even the price you pay at the store. When coffee cherries are ready, they turn bright red. Most of the time, they're picked by hand. Workers go through the fields and pick the only ripe cherries. This takes time and careful attention. Imagine picking berries one by one for hours. That's what this job is like. There are machines that can harvest coffee, but they're not always used because they can damage plants, they pick unripe cherries, and they don't work well on steep hills. So in many parts of the world, coffee harvesting is still done by hand. This part of the process reminds us that coffee isn't just a product. It's also people. A lot of labor goes into every bag of beans. Now we move to one of the most important steps, processing. Remember, coffee beans are inside a fruit. That fruit has to be removed before the beans can be dried and roasted. There are two main ways this happens. In wet processing, machines remove the outer fruit and the beans are washed in water. This helps create cleaner taste, which many people prefer. But it uses a lot of water, sometimes huge amounts, for large farms. Afterward, the leftover water contains bits of fruit and natural sugars. If this water is dumped into rivers, it can reduce oxygen in the water and harm fish. In dry processing, the whole cherries are spread out in the sun and left to dry. Once they're dry, the outer layers are removed. This method uses very little water, but it needs space, time, and good weather. If it rains too much, the crop can be ruined. Processing creates a lot of leftover material: the fruit, the skin, the pulp. Instead of throwing it away, some farmers are finding ways to reuse it. For example, turning it into a compost to help grow more plants, using it as fuel, and even turning it into food products or drinks. These ideas don't solve everything, but they help reduce waste and make the process more efficient. Now the beans are dried and ready to travel, and this is where coffee becomes a global product. Most coffee is grown in places far from where it's consumed, so it has to travel thousands of miles. Usually it goes from farms to local processing centers, then to ports, then onto large cargo ships, across oceans, then onto trucks, and finally to roasting facilities and stores. Ships carry huge amounts of goods, which makes them more efficient than planes, but they still burn fuel and release pollution into the air. And once the coffee reaches its destination, it still has more steps to go. After roasting, coffee is placed into bags to keep it fresh. These bags often have layers: paper on the outside with plastic or foil on the inside. This helps preserve flavor, but it makes recycling difficult. And then there are single-use coffee pods. They're quick and easy, but each one creates waste. Millions of them are thrown away every day. It's like using a brand new plastic bottle every time you want a sip of water. It adds up really fast. Before you can brew coffee, the beans have to be roasted. Roasting uses heat to bring out flavor. Light roast, medium roast, dark roast. It all depends on how long the beans are heated. This step uses energy, often from gas or electricity. Large roasting facilities use a lot of energy, but even small local roasters add to the total over time. Now we're finally at your kitchen, or your local cafe. Brewing coffee might feel simple, but let's break it down. You need water, heat, and equipment. Heating water uses energy. The amount depends on your method: electric kettle, coffee maker, stovetop, and so on. And then there's water use. You might only see a cup, but when you add up all the water used to grow and process the beans, it can take over 100 liters of water for a single cup of coffee. That's a surprising number for something that seems so small. At this stage, we also create waste: coffee grounds, paper filters, disposable lids, and cups. If you get coffee from a cafe every day in a disposable cup, that's hundreds of cups a year. The good news is, this is where your choices matter most. You can use a reusable cup, compost coffee grounds, choose coffee grown in better ways, and avoid single-use pods. These are simple steps, but they add up over time. So let's take a step back and look at the full journey. Your coffee started as a plant in a specific climate, was affected by farming choices, needed water and energy to be processed, traveled across the world, was packaged and roasted, and finally brewed using more energy and water. Every step has an impact, but every step also has opportunities to do things better. Farmers can protect forests, companies can reduce waste, and you can make small, smart choices every day. That's all for this week's episode. Thank you for listening to The Science Behind with me, Harper Creffitz. If you have any comments or questions, please email thesciencebehind.media@gmail.com, and I'll see you next week, where we make science make sense.